Hi everyone, welcome to ThatOneSecGuy's podcast, your one-stop shop for in-depth conversations on the evolving landscape of information and cybersecurity. Today we're thrilled to host Mr. Abhay Bhargav, a renowned DevSecOps expert with a proven track record of implementing successful security practices within software development teams. Abhay is the founder of appsec Engineer, a company that is building the world's best security training platform. He has helped product security teams deliver high performance and is also an author of 2 books and as well as a black hat trainer. So, welcome to the show, Abhay. How are you doing today?
No, thanks for having me. Thank you.
So, friends, in today's hyper-connected world, organizations are increasingly reliant on secure and reliable software, and DevSecOps offers a compelling solution by integrating security throughout the development lifecycle. So, in this podcast, we will explore how this methodology is transforming the way we build software. And to do that, we have Abhay, who is a DevSecOps expert with us. So, let's get started. Abhay, can you tell us a bit about your journey into the world of DevSecOps and why you believe it's such a critical approach in today's software development landscape?
Sure. Yeah. See, DevSecOps was something I started to do before even it was called DevSecOps. The term DevSecOps kind of came in at around, I think, 2017 or so. I've been doing what you would call DevSecOps since about 2014, and the reason I took to it really well, or I started exploring it very seriously, was simply because initially, right, around, so I started my first company, which I still run, called V45, which is an application security services company. And
Mm-hmm.
in that company, we do a lot of work around pen testing. Of course, today we do a lot of DevSecOps, cloud security work, but at the time, we were largely doing application security services, right? So
Mm-hmm.
things like penetration testing and architecture reviews and product security reviews and so on and so forth. Now, one of the common complaints I used to get from most of the people or most of my customers was that, look, yeah, I mean, this is great. You found all these issues. It's all good, but we never seem to get ahead of the problem, right? We're not able to get ahead of the problem. We're always trying to find vulnerabilities. We're always trying to figure out how do we address this issue while we should be ahead of the problem, or at least you should try and be ahead of the problem. That was the thing that they came up with.
Right.
And at the time, it was like the perfect storm when they were bringing this up, simply because at the time there was this thing called DevOps that everybody was talking about. I don't know
Yes.
if people remember this, and maybe most of your listeners may not have been in the industry. I don't know whether they were in the industry at that time, but maybe they're not. But at that time, there was this entire movement towards infrastructure as code that had just started. Things like
Mm-hmm.
Chef and Ansible and Puppet
Yes.
Labs and all that stuff
Terraform.
had just Terraform had not even actually entered the scene, from what I recall. Terraform still kind of might have just happened. I was not sure about it. So uh, it it was all this perfect storm of infrastructure and code had just started. Docker had just come to kind of not even, I would say, mainstream adoption. There was a lot of misconceptions around what Docker was even back then,
Mm-hmm.
but this was where there was this huge sudden burst of things happening in the DevOps scene, around infrastructure as code, around things like that, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I'm a very automation oriented chap, in the sense that I'm first of all fundamentally lazy. So when I'm fundamentally lazy, you want to automate as much as you possibly can. So for me,
Right.
that is a very compelling thought process to say that, look, how do we scale application security in a way that is least toil to the people working on it? So you look at the
Right.
toil around application security, the burden around application security, it's partially carried by the developers and partially carried by the security teams. Right? Now, the
Yes.
problem with both these people is that they have inversely proportional motivations to do this. Now, the
Mm-hmm.
security team typically comes towards the motivation of saying, "Hey, I want to bring in certain security capabilities into your product." And the product team is essentially on another focus. They're like, we want to ship features as fast as possible. Security can wait. We don't particularly care. Now, is there a way of harmonizing both those things? Was the thought process. And Of course, just like with DevOps, where you harmonize Dev and Ops, the idea was that how do you harmonize security as part of this process? So that is where I feel that at least that's where my journey started in DevSecOps. So
Mm.
around 2015, I built the world's first DevSecOps training, and I still teach it. In fact,
Wow.
I'm training on it at Black Hat, and in fact, we're launching a certification in appsec India very soon. So the idea is that there, there is always harmonization that you want between dev and sec and ops, obviously. And now DevOps is a lot more harmonized because people understand that paradigm quite well. But
Mm.
security is still kind of a new thing for a lot of teams. They've come from a position where security was done point in time, where it was done, okay, just before release or just before
Yes.
shipping this product, to the idea that you need to do it at every single stage of the SDLC
Mm.
is a big challenge for some teams. Some teams have taken to it really well. Some teams have taken to it not so well. And some teams it's constantly evolving as well, right? Because today you are seeing sudden change. I mean, the infrastructure scene has just burst into a completely different scene than it was, right? Now, today
Yes.
with cloud native and things like that, changing all the time, not just coming into the picture, but changing constantly. There is a huge amount of work that still needs to be done in this space, in my opinion. So in my opinion, that's where I started off, and I think that's where it's going. And now with AI and stuff like that, there is a completely new evolution that I think it's likely to go through.
Interesting. Interesting. So, you said one of the things which is very accurate I think even my own personal perspective, I've seen this, is that traditionally
Mm-hmm.
security assessments often occurred late in the development cycle, right? And
Mm-hmm.
which caused a lot of delays and rework. But
Mm-hmm.
DevSecOps kind of flips that by continuously fostering collaboration between developers, security professionals right from the get-go.
Mm-hmm.
And this proactiveness is what beats the reactive approach, I believe,
Mm-hmm.
right? So this proactive approach, it ensures that security is not an afterthought, but rather a fundamental consideration
Mm-hmm.
throughout the entire development lifecycle. So, Abhay, how can organizations overcome the historical siloed approach to development and security and
Mm-hmm.
effectively implement this collaborative culture within their teams?
Right. Yeah, I mean that's a very good question, and obviously a challenging question. So
Mm.
let's break that down a little bit, right? How do you first of all, when you look at an organization structure, you need to think about how they run DevOps first, how they run their existing processes. And it's not even an organization, I feel. So let me give you an example of what I'm talking about, right? Let's say you are in a company that ships 10 or 15 products. That's not
Mm.
even that big, right? It's 10 or 15 products, 10 or 15 software products or
Mm.
software services, whatever you want to call it. Uh, now, the behavior within each team in the same company is going to be very different. One team is going to be very, very automation friendly. One team will be probably dealing with some legacy application. They'll be extremely Luddite. It's not that within the same company itself you'll find the same experience. So you need to
Mm.
understand that you have to respect the working system, right? In anything, you have to respect the working system. So in that case, when you're looking at those sort of scenarios, the siloed approach or this, yeah, ideally you should not have silos. When you're doing DevOps itself, a lot of those silos should have been broken.
Yes.
And a lot of the times, Agile itself would have broken a lot of silos. DevOps would have broken a few more silos. So hopefully, by the time you want to do something like this, you
Mm.
have a relatively free of silos experience, which is good if you can
Mm.
have that. Now,
Mm.
that's not reality in most cases because most of the times you see that that's how things work in a lot of companies where they create more silos than less. So the problem with DevSecOps that you have to fight against is one, you have to start small in a way that it works with your organization's culture or your team's culture. Let's say
Mm.
it's siloed. There are some things you'll have to bring which cut across these silos. So, for instance, simply put, maybe we can introduce a static analysis into the build pipeline, or maybe we can introduce static analysis into pull requests. So that
Mm.
is the start you can take, and then slowly start maturing it over time, right? The problem is everybody wants this big bang implementation where they want everything implemented in the pipeline, all of these things working seamlessly and streamlined. And that generally fails when you go in with that kind of a big bang approach, right? Simply because a lot of people will not be okay with that. There was to give you an example of what I'm talking about. There was a team where we were working with them, and they had built pipelines that run for 1.5 minutes, and they
Okay.
brought it down to a like an undisputable kind of a science, and that if it runs for beyond 90 seconds, this is a failed build. I mean, this is going to be problematic for us because we are shipping at a rapid pace, and anything that touches this build uh, needs to run within 90 seconds. Now, in that case, if you try and tell them, please bring in SAS, please bring in SCA, please bring in, forget DAST, DAST is a longer, argument. As soon as you start telling them all those things, they're going to be like, no, sorry, it's not going to happen because we are shipping 20, 30 times a day and it has to run for 90 seconds or less than that is great, but we can't run for more than 90 seconds. So that was a siloed team. But the point there was that we tried to introduce a situation where instead of running it in the build pipeline, we told them that, why don't you think about running it in the PR cycles where you're running it on separate branches, and then on the build pipeline you can keep it that way, and maybe as a out of band job you can run this every night or every end of day or whatever it is. It still works, and it still works pretty well, but you're not running it in the build pipeline, and that's fine. So DevSecOps you need to understand that there is not one way to do it, right? There is not one DevSecOps. There are several variants of DevSecOps. So what I feel with DevSecOps is the more feedback loops you create as early as possible in the cycle, the better it is to you. So the more feedback loops, it's just about feedback loops, right? Because if you don't bring security front, that's what DevSecOps is actually doing, right? It's not doing something fancy. What you're essentially trying to do is bring security front and center as often and as early as you possibly can. So, for instance, if you do a threat model before every single release, that is DevSecOps. If you do static analysis as part of this or whatever it is, that is also DevSecOps. So don't get boxed into these notions of, okay, this is the best way to do it. If I have a unsiloed team only, I can do it. Otherwise, it's not possible. That doesn't work. That's not very real world. You have to understand that these are constraints. Culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? So you need to understand that you need to adapt to the culture and not expect culture to suddenly change, because culture has been built over years and your approach is suddenly new. So you need to understand that you need to slowly change things from the inside rather than expecting to introduce this reformation overnight, and that never works.
Lovely. I'm going to take that quote as a T-shirt print. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. I don't know if it's an original, but it was
No, it's
a
not.
brilliant quote.
It's somebody else's. I don't know whose it is, but I can't claim originality for that one for sure.
All right. Okay. Okay. All right. And beyond enhanced security, Abhay, DevSecOps also is offering a multitude of benefits, right? By automating security testing and integrating it seamlessly into development pipeline. DevSecOps also enables faster release cycles, like you said, correct? Like the 1.5-minute example that you gave. And also, secondly, it gives improved overall software quality. So let's delve little deeper into the quantifiable advantages organizations can expect from adopting a DevSecOps approach. And like you have already given one case study regarding the fast build that has been enabled using DevSecOps, have you witnessed any real world examples where DevSecOps led to a measurable improvement in the development efficiency or kind of led to even cost savings, right? Either of the two. And perhaps you can share a specific case study with our listeners.
Sure. I mean, so when it comes to, I can give you a bunch of different scenarios in which this has happened. So, see, when you're looking at quantifiable things, right? You want to see one of the obvious quantifiable things is, your the number of vulnerabilities or critical vulnerabilities you're trying to identify or you're finding through this process itself. That is one of the things that you can see. The other theme is typically mean time to fix, right? What is the typical time that it takes to fix this or identify and fix. All those things are important metrics that you have. But more important than that is, there is a metric called the DORA metric, which is the DevOps. I don't remember the full form right now, but there's a DORA metric. But the DORA metric essentially talks about the whole productivity of developers and engineering in terms of DevOps and how DevOps integrates into and how DevOps helps you build these things. I think it's better to integrate with metrics that are engineering driven rather than security driven. Because at the end of the day, the reason you're doing DevOps or DevSecOps, if ever, is that you are trying to make your engineering processes faster. You are trying to make your engineering processes better. So for me, more than the quantifiable things, there are a bunch of quantifiable things, and you can use all of these things for that. But the thing that for me becomes an indicator of a good DevSecOps implementation is one where you have an engineering team responsible for security. That itself changes the game, right? So it's like saying, see, there was a time in which you used to have quality or QA being a completely different process. QA being,
Correct.
so it was a completely siloed process. There would be QA people, and they would constantly be fighting with the developers, and there would be this constant tug of war between these two groups. And it still happens. I'm not saying it does not happen. But a lot of organizations have realized that this is not tenable. This is not going to work. Because QA quality is an absolutely essential, non-negotiable aspect of the software delivery process. So we have to find ways of making sure that quality assurance is an engineering problem. Now, if you look at it, security is also the same thing. Security is a subset of quality. So if you can start, those are the leading indicators for me that, okay, this team is very serious about DevSecOps. So for instance, let me give you an example, like you asked for, right? So there was this team in which we had started working. This was a travel, corporate travel, site platform that we were working with, and they were pretty big, and they have a lot of different companies that work with their corporate travel portal. Think of something like a MakePoint here, but for companies, specific to organizations all over the world. It's a huge company. So now this company, they started off with a very siloed kind of a thing. So one of the things we went in and did was that, first of all, we did so one of the things that I always mention, and the reason I even started AppSec engineer and the training bits, was that the first thing you have to do is train and set expectations. The problem with most companies is they embark on this great mission without setting expectations or giving any kind of training for anybody. They just expect that people will be aligned with this. That doesn't work. So this company went about it the right way, because they trained their people first to expect, hey, what is this thing? What is this? DevSecOps that we're even doing. So we trained them, we worked with them, we figured out that, okay, these are the kind of pipelines you have, or these are the kind of delivery processes you have. How can you bring in a certain amount of automation in strategic places? So once they matured to that point, we brought them into additional things, saying, okay, let's do threat modeling now, and let's start to bring in threat modeling at the earliest part of the cycle so that your engineering is involved. Over a course of 6 months to a year, you saw that their engineering team started thinking about security proactively in a way that every time they designed a feature, they would create a bunch of security stories for that feature and come up with, okay, these are the things that can go wrong. We need to design for this. These are the checklists that we use, etc., etc. That, for me, is a success. Because the other things you will always find a way of doing, right? The actual delivery and stuff like that happens. It's not that it won't. But if the burden of security is only on the security people, who are always short in a company, right? If you have 100 developers, there'll be 1 or 2 security people. If you expect those 2 people to take on the burden of security of the company or security of a product, you are always going to fail.
Okay.
So it's important to understand that the more engineering-led security is, the more secure you're actually going to be. Because that's really where security battles are won or lost.
Okay. Actually, we see this T-shirt a lot, right? A tester and a developer can never be a friend, and I think it's time we change that T-shirt by putting DevSecOps can maybe try or attempt to make those two friends,
Yeah.
because that's the cross collaboration culture that it is fostering.
Yeah.
Abhay, this is one thing that you said about introducing threat modeling and all. This is very common sense to us as security, because as security professionals we always want to do risk assessment at the very beginning of anything, right? And threat
Mhm.
modeling in essence is one way of doing risk assessments.
Yeah.
So but maybe that common sense culture is very predominant in security professionals, but might not be the case for engineering teams, as their missions and objectives are extremely different.
Mhm.
Go to go live or completing the user stories is what their priority might be. So
Mhm.
that's a very interesting shift. And in theory, devsecops
Mhm.
seems like it is a great solution to integrating the development and security and the operations teams, and bringing about a whole culture that makes software development happen at a very rapid scale. But
Mhm.
implementing DevSecOps is a different story than knowing it in theory, right? So
Mhm.
implementing DevSecOps successfully, that will
Mhm.
require a cultural shift within development teams.
Mhm.
Also, bridging that gap between developers and security professionals, that will
Mhm.
be the key. And
Mhm.
we'll discuss the practical strategies for fostering collaboration and ensuring that everyone is on the same page when it comes to security best practices. But in your experience, having so many DevSecOps based engagements, right, what are
Mhm.
some of the biggest hurdles organizations are facing when implementing DevSecOps, and what practical strategies can they adopt to bridge the communication gap between dev and sec?
Okay. Yeah. Again, this is a very important and quite a large scope question. So let me answer it the best I can. Right. So when you look at um, wanting to implement DevSecOps, no, a lot of times security goes into these kind of initiatives with no support and no sponsorship from senior management. Now,
Hmm.
the only see one of the big problems with these kind of things is that you need to get management to understand what they stand to gain by doing this. And that gain
Yes.
can't be some nebulous thing saying we'll reduce the vulnerabilities. Nobody
Correct.
cares.
Hmm.
Nobody cares about saying reduce. Okay, what is this going to cost me? How much is the revenue benefit? How much is the or potential revenue lost? What would be the reduction in the potential loss of revenue? Or
Hmm.
whatever that is, right? You
Hmm.
need to speak to them to get alignment in a way that, look, if you don't do this, you will be in either trouble. And
Hmm.
over time, you will also see this as a competitive benefit. So a lot of times when we've gone ahead and implemented DevSecOps, we've seen that it has become a competitive benefit for them because
Hmm.
they've been able to use that as the basis of saying that, okay, look, this is because we have this, we are able to achieve compliance faster, we are able to deliver to customers a lot more
Wow.
efficiently.
Hmm.
Customers don't come back to and so we are able to win deals on the back of our security rather than previously be security be a blocker. So you have to get
Hmm.
them to understand that point. That is the first hurdle, and that's the biggest
Brilliant.
hurdle,
Hmm.
right? That's the first hurdle. If you don't have that support, you will never be able to get this off the ground because management's objective is to make money. It's very simple,
Correct.
right? You
Hmm.
should, I mean, everybody says that, oh, yes, we want collaboration, we want harmony, etc. But when things are bad or when things are potentially bad or when
Hmm.
deadlines are missed and product delivery deadlines are missed, nobody cares about all of that stuff. You want to ensure that they give a lasting commitment to this because it's in their interest and it's because in the company's interest. So that's the first thing. And the problem with security professionals is they don't communicate that aspect very well a lot of times. That is one thing. The second thing that I think is a hurdle is basically kind of based on what you said, which is, yeah, it's common sense for us, but may not be common sense for them. And why should it be
Hmm.
common sense for them? They're not security people. So understanding that we need to make this common sense for everybody. That look, yeah, this is something that you need to take. You have to take seriously, simply because if you don't, you are going to be running afoul of these regulations. You are going to be missing these customer contractual requirements. You are going to
Hmm.
be not just fear, but you're also going to be left out in terms of security because our competitors are doing a much better job of this, whatever, XYZ reasons. So the idea is to bring about that first, right? Try and get that
Right.
sponsorship first and start doing things in a small way. A lot of times the hurdles come from people who just go to conferences and listen to some talks and they're like, oh yeah, I got to implement this in my company. This sounds like an amazing thing. Remember, the conferences are good for you to get ideas, but when you are coming back to your company, remember that your company has been working without all this for a while also. So don't think of it as some kind of you're going to save the company or something like that. Understand that this is you are first of all making your job a lot easier. Second thing is you are trying to sell them on the fact that your company is making. I mean, this is going to make their lives a lot easier and
Mm.
influence the culture from that standpoint without expecting the culture to break. Everybody says this, right? This is a very common movie dialogue. You see this in all these sci-fi movies. You're like, you need to destroy the world in order to rebuild it or something like that. That sort of
Yes.
approach. That doesn't work. That is an absolute crazy way to go about this. A lot of
Right.
people I see go about it or try to go about it that way, and those people either end up failing really badly or in some cases even getting laid off because of their efforts in trying to do this and how much friction they
Mm.
create because of this. So hurdles are really not technology. Hurdles are never technology. Hurdles are always people.
Okay.
So you have to
Okay.
get the people aligned. And only when you get the people aligned, trained, and properly understanding the reasons for why you do X, Y, or Z, and they get it and they understand what their responsibilities are and where their responsibility stops and starts and how they're
Mm.
getting incentivized or de-incentivized, only then it is going to work.
Interesting. Super insights, Abhay. I think I've never actually looked in uh, DevSecOps and in this angle, right? Like how it enables in competitive advantage and how it can be a business USP is something
Yeah.
I've never thought DevSecOps to be as. Brilliant. So, Abhay, it's been fantastic. Your insights are brilliant, and one of the things is that you are able to bring these insights because you've been doing this day in day out for way too many years, and like you said in the very beginning, right? You've been doing this even before DevSecOps was DevSecOps. So,
DevSecOps.
right, so DevSecOps actually as a landscape is extremely fast evolving. I mean, it's constantly evolving. I think even the stages went through a whole land shift. So
Mm-hmm.
we are exploring some emerging trends and innovations such as the use of AI in security testing and the
Mm-hmm.
rise of self-securing applications, right? How will these advancements shape the future of secure development? And
Mm-hmm.
crystal balls are optional, but looking ahead, what exciting trends or innovations do you see emerging in this space in the next few years?
Right. Yeah. So one of the things that you will see with AI, and I mean, the word AI is very heavy. Let me change that to LLMs because that's what we're mostly using, right? We're
Makes
using
sense.
large language models for everything. Now,
Fair enough.
when you look at these innovations, right, one thing that is definitely going to happen is that code is going to be produced at a record fast rate, right? It's definitely going
Mm.
to be produced at a massive speed, even with fewer people. So that is definitely going to happen. Now, even if that initial code, yeah, I know there are a lot of code, the code agents that claim to do something like Devin and all that, they're not living up to it
Yes.
right now.
Oof.
But
Ah.
there's going to be a time in which they're going to break through that barrier, right? And you're going to see a lot of code being written through AI. And remember, all of this code is derivative based on existing work. So you're going to have the same crappy vulnerabilities that AI is also going to generate for you. So
Mm.
you will see that LLMs generate crappy issues and humans generate crappy issues. So the same issues are going to be there, except that it's going to be there at a much faster pace.
Mm.
Now, one of the things that I've always maintained when it comes to LLMs or AI in general, generative activity is going to undergo a sea change. It's going to be faster, it's going to be easier, it's going to be more accessible than ever. Validation activity is where you're going to have a problem, where you are going to have to test these, validate whether it's actually secure before letting them out the gate, right, into the real world. So for me, that part of it has still not evolved. So for me, there is this. I see that part of it is still yet to go through. Yes, there are some AI-assisted security tools already out there. They can help, definitely, yes. But I still feel that there needs to be an evolution of validation tech in AI rather than just generation tech in AI, which is already there in plentiful. So
Right.
I think AI in security engineering looks like a very interesting space simply because just like you produce massive productivity in development, you also can produce massive productivity in security engineering. You can also produce massive productivity in terms of validation, right? So things like an AI can probably detect cloud security vulnerabilities in your system much faster than a human can, and much more effectively than a human can. There needs to be those kind of things. AI can do threat modeling. I'm one of those people. I just finished a Gen AI in threat modeling training last week that I delivered for a whole bunch of people. And basically, the promise of that is that you go from a few weeks to a few minutes to do threat model, to at least get initial threat modeling activities done with the
Right.
aid of AI. So these are the kind of things that I feel will take shape,
Okay.
will be helpful. But still, remember that even today, the validation is still very human centered because an AI will not be able to validate things. So,
Right.
as far as people are concerned, you need to, I mean, when it comes to shaping your careers and stuff like that, you need to be really practical in terms of what that can do for you. So a lot of the entry level stuff is now going to change into very, very high level stuff or very, very granular validation stuff. Uh,
Yes.
what used to be previously entry level generation activity is going to become very, very advanced validation.
Correct. Correct. Because the trivial activities are being automated by AI, so the
Exactly.
reduced barrier for entry has taken over.
Yeah.
Lovely. And you mentioned Devin AI. One of the incidents that happened is this caused a lot of panic in the engineering teams, right? Because Devin AI all of a sudden was able to do. See, the thing with Chat GPT and Gemini that did not scare the software developers or the engineering teams was the requirement to interconnect the software development processes, and that's something Devin AI kind of solved to a
Yes.
certain level, right
Yeah.
from creating the use cases all the way. So one of them came and asked me whether are we in trouble, is this the game over for us software engineering teams. And the one question I asked is a client will buy Devin AI, and still it is going to be the client's job to explain the requirement, and that's never going to be easy task, right? So that's where the whole game lies. You're never going to be able to effectively communicate your requirements in a software development language with an AI that you can bring to a software development team, which is human centric. So I don't think that it is going to be a complete replacement of engineering teams or anything of that sort. But like you said, yes, it is definitely an enabler, and the challenging part is going to be the pushed barrier for entry.
Yeah.
Lovely. So that's it from my end. Thank you, Abhay, for this is a brain opener for me. This DevSecOps session, kind of a mini crash course that you've given. I'm sure
Glad.
there's a lot more to it than just the half an hour we spent talking about it. But thank you for sharing your insights, and we hope to be able to learn more from you, and I hope to personally be able to meet you in person sometime and have a chat regarding some of the more deeper techniques in DevSecOps.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thanks for having me. This was very engaging. I like the questions and I really like the interaction as well. And hope to meet you sometime as well.
Thank you, Vargo. So that is it, friends. And we are concluding our podcast episode on DevSecOps with Abhay Bhargav today. And do feel free to post your thoughts on DevSecOps in the comments. And if you found this episode extremely informative, please do consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. And until next time, stay safe and stay curious.